The 2022 Hungarian general election was a huge victory for conservatives, far greater than what the polls predicted. Now, I've made numerous videos in the past about the Hungarian Civic Alliance, Fidesz, and the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán. Orbán was a leading anti-communist figure who became Prime Minister of Hungary the first time in the late 90s, back when Bill Clinton was President of the United States. And he has not been Prime Minister continuously, but he's been Prime Minister off and on as the pendulum has swung back and forth. But today was his greatest victory ever. So let me get straight into the whiteboard. So at the top, I have Fidesz, the Hungarian Civic Alliance. Now, there's also a smaller party, the Hungarian Christian Democrats, which is essentially a satellite party of Fidesz that they always run in a coalition together. And then you've got Movement for Hungary, or Hungary United. This was a six-party anti-Fidesz coalition, a broad spectrum of parties united just to oppose Fidesz. The largest two parties are Jobbik and the Hungarian Socialist Party, also the Hungarian Green Party that previously had some seats, and then there's three other smaller parties that range from centrist to progressive leftist. The big surprise here is my homeland. I made a video where I talked about this party once before. They were not even predicted to get any seats. This is basically a really hardline socially conservative party, and they got a surprise 6.3%. They won seats. Well, the polls claimed that Fidesz was barely leading the six-party anti-Fidesz coalition. We were seeing things, I mean, the polls were claiming that these guys were going to get, 40 to 46 or 47%, and Fidesz was going to just barely eke out a victory. Now, I want to point out that in Hungary, much of the opposition to Fidesz is actually coming from outside of the country. The United States State Department hates Fidesz, opposes Orbán. They were opposing Orbán in this election. The U.S. State Department was boasting about how there was going to be an unprecedented number of election monitors and that they were going to make sure that Orbán doesn't steal the election or commit absentee ballot fraud through the mail, even though the Biden administration claims that these things are impossible. And we've seen time and time again that opposition in Hungary is coming heavily from outside of the country. It's non-Hungarian media, political parties in foreign countries, non-profit organizations like the Soros Open Society funding opposition against Fidesz. And so that's why I claim this is such a great victory, because you have the establishment left from around Europe and North America opposing Fidesz and Viktor Orbán, and it blew up in their face. Now, I want to make clear that while I like Fidesz and Viktor Orbán, I always tell people not to hero worship politicians. So when I do a video like this, I always have people say, well, this person once did X. Well, and often I know about it. So don't hero worship any politician. If you hero worship them, they're going to break your heart. As we see here, Fidesz, 53.7%, way more than the polls claim they're going to get. And then you got my homeland, 6.3%, way more than the polls claimed. Essentially, the right of center parties got 60%. The anti-Fidesz coalition got 34.4%. The next largest parties, which will not win seats, get 5.1%. There was a party called the Dog with Two Tails, which I guess was like a protest party. I don't even know what they stand for. They got slightly over 2%. There's a party that was describing itself as a vaccine hesitancy party. They got 1%. And there is a party calling itself the Digitization Party, which I don't actually know what they were promoting, honestly, but they got 1%, or roughly thereabout. Now, the media got extremely dirty. They were trying to leverage the suffering of Ukrainian civilians against Fidesz and Orban. They were claiming that a vote for Orban was a vote for Russia, essentially. And Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, even published a really nasty video denouncing Orban, claiming that Orban was disrespecting Holocaust survivors by not doing more to support Ukraine. And the foreign minister of Hungary accused the Ukrainian embassy of trying to interfere with the election. Now, the government of Hungary under Fidesz is providing aid to the civilian population of Hungary, but they don't provide lethal aid. They also have a policy that they won't enact sanctions that are going to have a severe blowback on their own population. They are being attacked for this. And Volodymyr Zelensky is burning bridges left and right with Hungary, attacking them himself. And of course, you might notice the number one cheerleader for extreme sanctions is the United Kingdom, which gets the least amount of products from Russia of anyone, so they have the least to lose. The Times, which is considered the most prestigious of the large newspapers in England, came out and said that Boris Johnson and his administration is actively pushing Zelensky to reject a negotiated peace and keep the war going. And like I said, he's got the least to lose. Countries like Hungary have a lot to lose by putting extreme sanctions on Russia. And so we see this whole narrative where things that the radical left advocated before the war started anyway, they're now saying, oh, well, we have to do this to fight Russia. So we have to deindustrialize and give up fossil fuels, not because we advocated this anyway, but to fight Russia. And we have to defeat Fidesz and Viktor Orban, not because we hated his guts anyway before the war even started, but to fight Russia. And so as I publish this, headlines are coming out in the United States: right-wing, pro-Kremlin, pro-Putin, party of terror wins election in Hungary. Well, let me tell you how disingenuous the media is. One of the largest members of the 6-member anti-Fidesz coalition that the media loves so much is Jobbik. For years and years, the mainstream media called them neo-Nazis, neo-fascists, extreme right, far right, all that stuff. The instant they pivoted to being anti-Fidesz, the media absolved them of all sin. In the media's eyes, they went from being actual neo-Nazis to a moderate centrist party. The media is fake. If you don't believe me, Google it. Google Jobbik and look at some of the articles from a few years ago. The first time Jobbik got members elected to the European Parliament, they had to sit by themselves. They were pariahs because the media called them neo-Nazis. Now, there was also a general election in Serbia. This election is a bit more confusing, and I'll have to analyze it a little bit longer, but I'm going to try to make a video about the election in Serbia tomorrow. Now, there's a Serbian Green Party that went from 3% to 10%, and the main center-right party lost a bunch of seats. But then at the same time, there's a whole bunch of new parties that look like they won seats, and some of them, I think, are probably more conservative than the main party that lost seats, so it gets real confusing. But I'm going to check that out once I get done editing this video. All right, thanks for watching this video. Click the like button, post a comment below, tell me what you think, and please subscribe to my backup channels on BitChute and Odyssey. I'll post links in the description below. YouTube already greatly suppresses the distribution of my videos, and I don't know how long it's going to be till they delete me entirely. YouTube has already deleted hundreds and hundreds of conservative channels already, as most of you are aware. All right, click the subscribe button. New video every few days.